And we're back with episode 10 of Dog Football Weekly. It's your host, Reed, with your co-host,
Russ.
And today we have a very special guest from dogpost.com, Mr. Dean. Mr. Dean, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are y'all?
We're doing all right. Well, let's just jump right into it. Obviously, we just have a couple questions to ask. First off, did you see the news about Marvin Jones Jr. this morning?
Yeah, and this is the sort of stuff that happens in the offseason. I don't think it's really a giant, concern in terms of the 23 season. I mean, guys in the offseason are going to get things cleaned up, and, it doesn't seem to me like it's going to be a big deal moving forward. But, you never know with recoveries, but
yes, sir.
This does not seem to be serious.
Yes, sir. Well, I think he's going to play a big part in that defense next year, and just hoping for a speedy recovery, and hopefully it's nothing. I didn't really read up on what he's getting done. I just saw he's missing spring practice.
Right, and that's common.
Yes, sir.
Georgia and everybody else is littered with guys who just don't play in the spring. It's not abnormal at all.
Yes, sir. Well, Russ, you got anything on that?
Now we just need our guys healthy,
Yeah. Well, I want to talk a little bit about the NFL draft. Obviously, I've been looking at a lot of big boards lately, and I got a question about a couple guys, where you see them going. My first one is Warren McClendon. Where do you see him going?
Yeah, Warren's a good question. You would think because he left early that it would be a first 3 rounds kind of thing. I really don't know. I would not think that he would be in the top 50 of guys going. But Warren was a hell of a player at Georgia. I know that much. And how long, it will take him to go off the board for the draft? That's a good question.
Yes, sir. Well, I was looking because I don't read a whole lot up on the NFL draft until we get closer to time, which we're coming up on it now, obviously. But it was under my idea that he'd be, top 50 because he left early. And I was looking at boards this morning. He's like a projected 3rd or 4th round guy.
Right.
Most likely he's honestly could be a day 3 guy.
Yeah.
And what's written about him on the internet, I don't think it does him very well, because he was a great player on that offensive line. He played a big role for 3 years. He's a 3-year starter on that line.
Yeah, but you never really know what you're getting into with guys that leave early. I mean, typically they're leaving early because it's in their best interest to leave early because they're really maximizing their value heading into the league. But with Warren, that could be the case, or he may just be kind of tired of school. I mean,
yes, sir.
There's never any really knowing of what it is.
Yes, sir. Another guy, obviously Jalen Carter is going to be a top 5 pick, hopefully number 1 to the Bears. Where do you see Broderick Jones going?
First round for sure. Where after that, I don't know. I mean, met Broderick when he was 16, maybe something like that, when he was playing at Lithonia, and just so athletic, and waited 2 years to start. He essentially played the most meaningful snaps against in the national championship game against Alabama. But Broderick didn't start most of that year in 2021. In 22, he was about as good as you could be, and I think somebody that gifted and that young. I mean, he only played 3 years at Georgia. He does not have a lot of tread on the tires because a lot of that time he didn't play. Broderick's going to be – you never make your real money in your first NFL contract. It's always your second contract. He's young enough to where that will be where he's about 26 or 27 years old. He will be really cashing in at that point. But I think he'll be a top – you don't totally know, although he's a tackle. I'd be surprised if he doesn't go in the top 20.
Yes, sir. I think he's going to be right around like 10 to 15. I could see him going. And there's obviously the Northwestern guy. He's getting a lot of hype. Who's the other tackle, Russ?
I can't remember.
Anyway, another guy who his stock's kind of going up and down as the year. Keely Ringo. Where do you see Keely Ringo falling in this year's draft?
Keely's a good question. He really had a lot on his shoulders in 22 because he was the guy that dealt with everybody's best receiver. It seemed for a while like he would be a first-round guy even late into the year. But lately I've noticed where he's not considered that for whatever reason. I think the combine will really matter a lot for him. And pro day too. You really only have two three if you are a senior, but you have the All-Star games. But if you're an underclassman like Keeley and Broderick and Warren, you really only have two places to change people's views of you. That's combine and then pro day. The individual workouts as well. That's where things can really skyrocket for guys. But I mean, if Keeley's on the board late in the second round, that'd be pretty surprising. You just don't get a lot of guys like him and his size, his ability to really run with the size. He's going to be a good NFL player for a long time.
I think he's going to have a great combine. I think he's going to have a great pro day. And I genuinely think he's going to end up being a top 20 guy. Just because of that size and speed combination.
He's got raw talent.
At the corner is hard to find.
Yeah.
And I think he has his flashes. Obviously, the Tennessee game's a high point in his career. He had a great game in the title game against Alabama last year. But he's obviously going to be a project for any NFL team that drafts him.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Because guys like that get drafted that high at that position, they're going to play.
Yes, sir.
And, everybody, the days of development kind of end once you leave college. There's only so much you can develop after that point. So I think for Keeley, it's where does he go? What do they run? But he's going to be out there. He's just too big, physical, and can run too well to not be out there.
Well, Mr. Dean, where do you think
Darnell?
Darnell, where do you think Darnell's going?
He's a good question. He's not a certain first-round guy, but he certainly could become one. He is so it's hard to put into words how big Darnell is because, most tight ends are pretty big people, but Darnell is beyond big. He makes Brock Bowers look small, and Brock's not a real small guy.
Brock Bowers is 6'4", 235 pounds.
I mean, it's crazy. You got a guy who can run and who can block, and he can do pretty much anything you want him to do.
Yeah, I mean, Brock is a heck of a player, but Darnell is just a physical presence, and you don't. He's much more like a oversized basketball guy running around out there than a football player. And I say that having played basketball in college. You saw people that were similar to Darnell, maybe not that size in terms of weight, but you saw that sort of wingspan and all that. So Darnell is not normal at all. I would think he's definitely a top 50 guy. I don't know if he's going to be a first-round guy or not. Some people do have him that high. I don't think you're wasting your pick going with Darnell in the first round because if you want to really bully people, he can do that for you.
I think he's definitely going to be I think he's tight end number 2. I think Michael Mayer from Notre Dame.
Right, from Notre Dame.
I think he's definitely more developed and he's shown more. But I think Brock's definitely going to be your tight end number 2 taken. It's just a matter of who gets those late round picks and who really needs a guy at that position. Because like a team like Kansas City's not going to draft him because they got Travis Kelce, and even the Eagles, they got Goddard. It's going to be a team maybe like the Chargers. They need a tight end. Jaguars, a team like that. That's where I could see him being picked up. And he may.
You can't ever know.
Yes, sir.
If anybody really likes you, they're going to go. They're going to go do it.
Yes, sir. Another guy, obviously, he's the face of the program, Stetson Bennett. I've seen his odds kind of up and down really for the past, ever since the national title game. I've seen people saying, he's 7th-round guy, day 3 guy, and I've seen guys rank him as high as 3rd round. Where do you see him going? Because he's the biggest question mark in this class.
Well, the public intoxication never helps because it just makes it look like you're not being serious. And, I think that for Stetson, that was an unforced error that he didn't have to make. But all that said, that's one day. It's not, it's one day in his life. It's one mistake. It's not the worst mistake in the world to make. I don't know. I mean, I think that he will get drafted. I think third round at this stage is harder to believe because, people are going to really hold that against him if they want to. They're going to say, all you have to do is keep your nose clean, and you couldn't do it. NFL franchises will use any reason in the world not to draft you. Stetson's not a guy that's walking into a situation where he's going to be a certain backup. He may be fighting to be the number 3 on any roster that he gets to. So that's the problem for Stetson. But if you watch him live, you see his spectacular athleticism, his ability to really throw the ball on the run. I don't know if you see his intelligence, but it's definitely there. And he just is one of the most athletic players playing quarterback today. And that's really saying something with some of these guys that are playing quarterback. But he has a next level to him that a lot of folks don't seem to have. The other drawback for Stetson is by the time that they're playing football in the fall,
He'll be 26.
He'd be 26 years old. I was talking earlier about Broderick being 27 when he gets his second contract. Stetson will still be on his first. And that's definitely an issue for NFL franchises. They want to get maximum value out of any particular person. Anything after the first round, the contracts are very similar. They're not 5 years. There's restrictions on particular things. If you get drafted in the first round, you are probably with that franchise for the bulk of your career, if not longer. For Stetson, if he is a second round or beyond, there's no shot he's going to be in the first round. Everything's going to be about where does he land? Do they have issues at quarterback? Because if you're Stetson, you want them to have issues at quarterback. And how do you fit in? We've seen with the Niners, Brock Purdy. It's hard for me to believe that Stetson's not at least as good a quarterback as Brock Purdy. It's all that. It all adds up. Where is the best place for him to play? We'll just find out. But I think he's probably 5th, 6th, 7th round.
Yes, sir. One more question. Actually, I guess it's 2. Do you think Todd Monken stays, and who do you think starts under center for the Dogs in 23?
It seems to me like Todd Monken is still very much in the air. I don't know the answer to that. My suspicion at first was that he was sticking around. Now I don't know because he's had his second interview with the Ravens. He's not the only one to have had 2 interviews with the Ravens. I don't know what will happen with Todd Monken. I'm not smart enough to say. I would say that Carson Beck is certainly in position to be the starting quarterback next year. He looked really good when he played. There's just a lot of stuff about Carson that was very good. If he gets beaten out, I'd be surprised this spring. But, both Brock and Gunnar are exceptional athletes. They got to play quarterback better. And I think particularly for Brock, that's something that we'll have to monitor. We don't know what we don't know. We don't know what the future will hold with both of them. But I would imagine that Carson is in the best position.
Yes, sir. I really don't think it matters as long as you keep Todd Monken who starts under center in this system. But I do think Carson Beck gets the first snap. But I wouldn't be surprised because Georgia really will not be tested till later in the year when they play Ole Miss, Tennessee, Florida, those 3 games. So I really wouldn't be surprised to see if 2 quarterbacks, if Carson started a game and then Brock started a game, if Carson doesn't perform.
No, I don't think they're both going to start. That would surprise me. That would mean that Carson has lost grip of where he's at. I think they'll both play. I think you could see 3 guys play. But in terms of different starters, that means you really don't know what's going on. And I just don't think Kirby's going to be in that position.
Yes, sir. Which quarterback do you think will transfer?
I don't know that we know that.
Yes, sir.
It would be Brock, you would think.
Yes, sir.
We're not in that position yet.
Yes, sir. Well, that's going to be it for today's episode. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Dean.
All right, thank you.
All right. Russ, you want to close this out?
We want to thank everybody for listening, and we'll be back sometime next week.
Thank you.